In recent years, the African continent has seen a resurgence of political movements and voices that reject the long-standing structures of neocolonialism. Among the most talked-about figures in this transformation is Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the interim leader of Burkina Faso. A military officer who came to power in September 2022 through a coup d'état, Traoré has captured the imagination of many across Africa, particularly among the youth, who are frustrated with economic hardship, foreign control, and systemic inequality. Traoré's vision is bold, revolutionary, and unapologetically pan-African. He speaks of reclaiming African resources, establishing economic sovereignty, rejecting Western-imposed institutions, and empowering local industries. But while his ideas inspire hope in some, others question whether they are realistic, achievable, or sustainable in the face of Africa's complex economic dependencies and the fragile state of Burkina Faso itself. To understand the depth of Traoré's vision, we must look at the legacy of colonialism and how it continues to shape African economies to this day. When European powers colonized Africa, they did not build nations with self-sufficient economies. Instead, they created systems designed purely for the extraction of raw materials, gold, rubber, cotton, coffee, and oil, that could be shipped to Europe. Railways and roads were laid not to connect African people, but to transport goods from mines and plantations to ports. After so-called independence in the 1960s, many of these extractive systems remained in place. Former colonial powers retained strong influence through trade, currency systems, and multinational corporations. In Burkina Faso, for example, gold is the top export, yet foreign companies dominate the mining industry, and most profits leave the country. Local communities near the mines remain impoverished, while the natural wealth of the land benefits outsiders. This economic model, which has been maintained for decades under the guise of development and aid, is precisely what Traoré wants to dismantle. One of the most controversial aspects of Traoré's leadership is his confrontation with France, the former colonial ruler of Burkina Faso. He has accused the French government of maintaining indirect control over Francophone Africa through mechanisms like the CFA franc, a colonial-era currency that still ties 14 African countries to the French treasury. Under this system, African countries must deposit a significant portion of their foreign reserves with France. Critics argue this limits monetary sovereignty and locks African economies into structures that serve French interests. Traoré, along with other leaders like those in Mali and Niger, has called for the total rejection of the CFA franc and for the creation of a new currency that reflects the economic independence of the region. While such a move would be historic, it is also fraught with risk. Currency reform requires stability, strong financial institutions, and mutual trust among participating states. Yet, for many Africans, even the desire to break from the CFA system symbolizes a powerful shift in mindset, one that says Africa no longer wants to be managed by external powers. Traoré's ambitions extend far beyond monetary policy. He is actively trying to restructure the way Burkina Faso manages its natural resources. Under his leadership, the government has begun reviewing foreign mining contracts and has even suspended or canceled some. There is a growing push for state control or majority local ownership of resource extraction, with revenues directed back into national development. This is a major shift from previous governments that often granted long-term concessions to multinational companies under unfair terms. Traoré argues that unless Africa controls its own resources, it will never control its future. Yet, this approach poses serious practical challenges. Mining requires advanced technology, logistics, global buyers, and experienced management, much of which Burkina Faso currently lacks. There is also the risk that sudden nationalizations could drive away foreign investment, worsening unemployment and reducing GDP. However, Traoré's supporters argue that no nation ever achieved economic independence by waiting for permission. For them, short-term sacrifice is worth long-term sovereignty. Another key element of Traoré's vision is unity, not just within Burkina Faso, but among African countries, particularly in the Sahel region. In response to increasing pressure and sanctions from Western-aligned institutions like ECOWAS, Traoré has partnered with Mali and Niger to form the Alliance of Sahel States. This new regional bloc seeks to promote mutual defense, shared infrastructure, and economic cooperation, free from foreign control. While all three countries are under military rule and their democratic credentials are debated, their unified stance has become a symbol of resistance to neocolonialism. Critics argue that these alliances are fragile and that military-led governments lack the legitimacy to guide long-term economic planning. Still, the idea of African nations standing together, not as aid recipients or client states, but as sovereign equals, resonates strongly with the public. It reflects a growing desire for homegrown solutions to African problems. Despite the popularity of his rhetoric, Traoré faces immense challenges at home. Burkina Faso remains one of the poorest countries in the world. More than 2 million people have been displaced due to ongoing jihadist violence. Entire regions are under threat, and the state struggles to maintain control beyond major urban centers. Infrastructure is weak, healthcare is underfunded, and schools are closing due to insecurity. While Traoré has inspired hope, inspiration alone cannot feed people or protect villages. His government needs to show tangible progress, better roads, more jobs, improved safety, if it wants to maintain credibility. Moreover, the lack of democratic process in his rise to power raises questions about how long this system can endure. Will there be elections? Will the military relinquish control? Can institutions be built that outlive the man himself? These are questions that will define whether his vision becomes a national project or a temporary experiment. What makes Traoré's movement so unique is that it is not just about policy, it is about reclaiming dignity. Across Africa, particularly among young people, there is a rising frustration with the way the continent is portrayed and treated by the global system. From international loans that trap nations in debt, to trade policies that favor Europe and the US, to foreign military bases that operate without accountability, many Africans feel that true independence has never been achieved. Traoré speaks directly to that feeling. He refuses to act like a client leader. He demands respect for Africa's sovereignty. He dares to dream of an Africa that builds its own industries, educates its own people with its own philosophies, and governs itself on its own terms. Whether or not he can deliver this dream is uncertain, but the fact that he dares to imagine it at all is already a radical act. In the end, the question remains, can Ibrahim Traoré's vision transform Africa's economy? There is no easy answer. The forces he is confronting, global capitalism, foreign military power, multinational corporations, post-colonial institutions, are massive, complex, and deeply entrenched. But revolutions do not begin with easy answers. They begin with difficult questions. Traoré has forced Africa and the world to ask those questions again. Who owns Africa's wealth? Who decides its policies? Who benefits from its labor and land? If nothing else, Traoré has reminded the continent that change is possible, not guaranteed, not simple, but possible. And sometimes, in a world shaped by centuries of exploitation and silence, that reminder alone is enough to spark a movement that refuses to die. So, what do you think? Can Ibrahim Traoré's vision truly reshape Africa's economic destiny? Or is it a dream too bold for today's reality? Is Africa finally ready to reclaim its wealth, its policies, and its future from the grip of foreign powers? Or will history repeat itself once again? Whatever your opinion, one thing is clear. A new generation of Africans is rising, proud, determined, and unafraid to question the systems that have held them back for decades. If you found this video thought-provoking, make sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more deep dive content on African politics, economic justice, and stories that mainstream media often ignores. Your support helps us keep asking bold questions and bringing powerful narratives to the screen. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay critical, and we'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Peace and power.